Down better. Okay, thank you, Brian.
We are recording now.
Okay, go ahead, Joseph.
Okay. Now where'd this go? Oh, you should be able to see my screen now. Know if everybody can.
I can see it, Joseph.
Yes.
Okay, so as Elise said, this is our new WorkSource system reporting presentation, and we'll get started with. So it's going to start with the basics and go through the whole thing. You can ask questions. A lot of these beginning parts I'll give a quick intro to, and then there'll be more explanation and a couple of slides. So, but either way, just put it in the chat or raise your hand. So WorkSource is Washington's workforce development system. It is a joint venture of the business, labor, the state, the Washington Workforce Alliance, State Board of Technical Colleges, the Workforce Training and Education Coordinating Board, and other partners at local level, state, nonprofits, and local government agencies. Efforts to Outcomes, or ETO, is the current WorkSource employer and customer management information system, and it's managed by ESD, the Washington Workforce Alliance, the Workforce Development Areas, and other WorkSource partners. And ETO is the main source of WorkSource reporting. So the goal of the WorkSource system is to just get people jobs and services like education and training. And it serves job seekers, program participants served by staff and eligible for education or training, and employers. The WorkSource development areas are 12 geographic regions set by the Employment Security Department within Washington State. There are economic areas that are reported together because of similar conditions for reporting purposes. The Workforce Development Councils are set by the Washington Workforce Association, and currently they align exactly with the WDAs. And again, these are just economic areas that are reported together because there are similar conditions. So the start of the employment service began with the Wagner-Peiser Act of 1933. And it established a nationwide system of public employment offices known as the Employment Service. And it was designed to improve the functioning of the whole nation's labor market by bringing employers and job seekers together. The Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act of 2014, WIOA, was implemented to replace the Workforce Investment Act of 1998. And it is designed to help job seekers access employment and services to succeed in the labor market, while also matching employers with the skilled workers they need to compete in the global economy. WIOA also amended the Adult Education and Family Literacy Act under Title II, the Wagner-Peiser Act under Title III, and the Rehabilitation Act of 1973 under Title IV. There's a link in this presentation, which you all will get a copy to for more information about this. So the big question is the PIRL. What is the PIRL? The PIRL is a participant individual record layout, and it's a federally mandated layout for the data submitted for WIOA participants that provides a standardized set of data elements, definitions, and reporting instructions. The PIRL provides the framework to allow the workforce development system to meet reporting requirements while also ensuring consistency and comparability across grantees and programs. So the current PIRL is the DOL only PIRL. They're working on the DOL and the Education Department on the joint PIRL, which will include the requirements for Title II and Title IV, but they haven't worked out all the kinks for that yet, so we're still only using the DOL PIRL. Currently, there's 490 rows with 17 columns. There's a row for each job seeker, 1 column for reportable individuals, and 16 columns for each of the programs that are possible to be reported on. Each quarter, Washington State submits 300 to 400,000 records of the DOL only PIRL through the federal system called the Workforce Integrated Performance System, or WIPS. So who is reported on the PIRL? It's anyone who, okay, so there's 2 types of people. There's reportable individuals and program participants. Reportable individuals are anyone who uses the WorkSource system and also provides identifying information and includes demographics. But they only use self-service or information-only services. So anybody that comes into the WorkSource WA website and looks up a job or gets labor market information, they would be a reportable individual. A program participant also has to provide the identifying information and demographics, but then they have to meet the eligibility requirements for enrollment in one of the programs, and they have to receive a staff-assisted service. Reportable individuals. So the PIRL reports participation in clusters. And again, it's different based on whether they're a reportable individual or a program participant. Reportable individuals are reported just on the date of their first self-service or information-only activity. So the first time they contact with the WorkSource WA system, that counts their participation. For program participations, it varies by program. So Wagner-Peiser, it's Title III. It's the date the job seeker received their first staff-assisted service under the Wagner-Peiser staff. For the other ESD programs, the date the job seeker received their first staff-assisted service attached to the program. And then the exit, Washington State uses a common exit, and that's so that no matter what programs you're involved in, if all of the programs that a participant is enrolled in, if they haven't received any new staff assisted services for 90 days and there's nothing planned, then they're exited from all the programs. So this can mean that there are multiple participation episodes for each job seeker. The multiple participations are per quarter, but the duplicates, if their duplicates are not allowed, and they're caught when we submit the PIRL in through the WIP system, which also checks for logic errors and data logic. So the programs included in the PIRL, these are the core DOL programs and some key programs outside of WIO. If they're underlined here, it's reported by ESD. I want to point out that only those underlined are reported out by ESD. So the PIRL, as I said, is 490 elements. And now for PY 2021, they're adding another 10 or 15 for all of these elements. So what is measured with the PIRL, and what does WIOA want or talk about when it talks about performance? So there's 6 primary performance measures, which are the core indicators of performance. And there's employment and earnings core indicators, which are 3 measures, skill gains and credentials attained core indicators, which are 2. And the last one is the employer core indicator. So adults in all programs are measured for employment in the 2nd quarter after exit, employment in the 4th quarter after exit, and median earnings. I'll go into a little bit more of the definitions of these in just a minute. Youth program participants are measured under employment or education rate, 2nd quarter after exit, employment or education rate, fourth quarter after exit, and median earnings. Title I adult and youth programs are also measured for credential attainment, measurable skill gains. And then the last indicator is effectiveness in serving employers. So the employment rate, second, it's measuring is participants who are in unsubsidized employment during the second quarter after they exit the program. And so these are what are being counted as successes. And then it's for the fourth quarter after exit, it would be for who are in unsubsidized employment for the fourth quarter after exit. So for youth only, it's the percentage of participants who are in unsubsidized employment or enrolled in a training program or education during the second or the fourth quarter after exit. There's more information in a link here. Then the median earnings are for the second quarter after exit, and it's the participants who are in unsubsidized employment in the second quarter after exit. And this talks a little bit about what the median number, it's the median of the series of all the numbers and how it's calculated. Credential attainment is credential attainment is enrolled in education or training programs that lead to a post-secondary credential, a secondary school diploma, or a recognized equivalent. This doesn't include on-the-job training or customized training. It has to have some kind of an industry recognized credential. And here the successes again are if you've exited during your program, or you earned it during your participation in the program, or up to 1 year after you exit from the program. This is the decision path that's found on the DOL education site, and it's here for reference. So the data that's needed in ETO for credentials attainment is entered in the individual training and support service touch point. And you have to make sure that there's an activity start date, an activity end date, and an actual income. Then in the program completion outcomes touch point, the credential earned, verification upload, and the type. And or it could be entered in the follow-up touch point, again, the type of recognized credential and the date of credential. There is also some data that comes in from the National Student Clearinghouse. Then we get to measurable skill gains. Okay, so measurable skill gains is the participants during a program, you are in education or a training program that leads to a post-secondary credential or employment, and they're achieving some kind of measurable skill gain, which it has to be documented. So we'll get to that in the next slide here. Some examples of what counts as a measurable skill gains are one educational functioning level for someone who is below the post-secondary education level, attainment of a secondary school diploma, a report card or a post-secondary transcript saying that you completed the proper number of credit hours with a passing grade as set by the state to show that you are working towards a degree. Or satisfactory or better progress report with established milestones such as like an on-to-the-job training or an apprentice program or an employer training program, and who is providing the training, or the successful passage of an exam for a particular occupation, like getting your CDL or your welding certificate. So for ETO, the data that needs to be entered in the measurable skill gains, the first thing that needs to be filled out is the test and results touch point. And this is just an example of the very first part, and you have to pick what type of credential it is. Once you pick this, it will generate everything that needs to be done for those. You have to make sure that all of those get filled out. And then in individualized training and support service touch point, there has to be an activity start, end date, and an outcome. Or in the program completion outcomes, there needs to be the credential earned, the verification of the upload, or the type of credential. Effectiveness and survival being worked out by the Department of Labor and the Education Department. They've started a pilot program in which each grantee must select 2 of 3 approaches. And DOL and the Education Department will use all of this pilot data to decide on what will be the permanent indicator for it, and then they'll use the data to start setting performance goals for the future. So Washington State has picked approach 2 and approach 3, repeat business customers and employer penetration rate. And this report is to be submitted to DOL annually by the Workforce Training and Education Control Board. So the PIRL. The PIRL reporting timeline is by quarters, and then roughly at about, it's within 45 days after the end of the quarter, the PIRL the final PIRL has to be submitted with no errors and then certified in the WIP system. And then there's, after the program year 4th quarter, there's an additional 1-month chance for states to identify any data corrections that need to be made. And the last PIRL has to be submitted with no errors and certified by October 1st. And then at the same time, by December 1st, the state has to prepare their annual narrative report about how the program year went, what each program did, what their successes were, what they were working on, etc. I see a hand up, or?
Joseph, we do have a question in the chat. And that is, what is the difference between the PYQ4 and annual report?
Okay, so the annual report is the summary of any changes that were identified during data element validation throughout the year, or any last chance for the last quarter that, hey, we noticed that these people didn't have the right information and so they weren't counted on the PIRL, but the field can get those corrected. It's a last chance to affect the performance outcomes.
Thank you, Joseph.
Okay, so the PIRL reporting timeline is further complicated because when the PIRL is submitted and certified, the quarterly performance reports are generated, which I'll get into next. But the cohorts that are reported for all of these measures vary from year to year. So this is an example of PY 2020's quarters. So the first quarter, the report was due November 14th. So the reportable individuals, the cohort for that is from October 1st of 19 through the end of September of 20. But if you go down to employment rate 2nd quarter after exit, the cohort that is measured is people who exited between October 1st of 2018 and the end of September of 2019. Now, the reason for this is that DOL allows for at least 2 quarters for the data to be mature enough. That means that it's all been caught up and like wages have been reported. that their data is mature enough to actually measure. So that varies by what's being measured and the demographics. So it's confusing for a lot of people because we'll send out the results for like we just sent out PY 2020 Q2, and they're like, well, I had X number of people that had credential attainment in this quarter, but it's not measuring this most recent quarter. It's measuring the people from the 1st of July of 2018 through the end of June of 2019. So the quarterly performance and the local areas are doing on the 6 primary indicators of performance. And then it also breaks it down into the demographics and other characteristics. So WIOA Title III, it includes self-service, general participants in employment services, veterans, and MSWs. Title I is adult, dislocated worker, and youth, and the additional programs that ESD directly administers, which right now the only reports we get are for Jobs for Veterans Straight grants, National Dislocated Worker grants, and Trade Act assistance. The Trade Act assistance, the quarterly reports, Carrie, correct me if I'm not, but we don't share the QPRs for this because that comes from something else. Am I right with that?
The QPRs are generated, but the National Office for Trade views the data in a different format. So they take that directly from the PIRL to calculate performance, but there is a QPR that is generated quarterly.
There's 3 time frames that could be reported: quarterly, rolling 4 quarters, or program to date. Program to date is mostly used for the National Dislocated Worker grant on some of the grants. DOL has recently changed that so that you're only reporting on the QPRs are only generated for active NDD WG grants. And then the QPRs are available statewide or for the WDA, but that's only for the Title I and the Title III. The JVSG, NDWG, and Trade Act aren't published at the WDA level. And these report the standard performance measures and summary information. QPR, they're published every quarter in the report library, which Elise showed at the very beginning, and it includes QPRs for previous quarters. So this is an example of some of the information that's reported on the QPRs, the number, the performance items, the training services delivered, individual career services, total exiters, which is the summaries, total participants, total reportable individuals, then the demographics of the people that were served and what services they got, employment barriers, core indicators of performance, and the veterans' priority of service. This is an example of the PY 2020 Q1 QPR for WIOA adult for state, or the rolling 4 quarters for the state. And this shows you just quickly as the employment barriers, participant summary and service information, the total exiters. Here's the performance indication, the indicators of performance, and then the veterans' priority of service. So the other system performance WorkSource data is in the dashboard, which Elise showed that we're working on getting updated, but it provides the data analysis of the state's workforce system. And this includes state data, the WDA data. The data is presented in aggregated totals. It does not contain data at the office or seeker level. The employments that are reported are not the official employment numbers. It counts seekers employed in the second quarter after exit, provides a view to what trends may be occurring. It does not include out-of-state wages. It's not based on the QPRs, and calendar quarters are reported, not program year quarters. The data comes from the WorkSource and Employment Security Department records, as well as U.S. Census Bureau, Bureau of Labor and Statistics, the Washington State Office of Superintendent of Public Instruction, and the Washington DSHS.
Let me just say quickly, we are in the middle of a new project, which will build a new dashboard, which will be built off PIRL definitions, which will coincide with the PIRL. So this old dashboard was built a long time ago by a different commissioner with a different motive in mind and different reasons. He wasn't looking to compare it to the PIRL. It was built for a totally different reason. So we understand there is some confusion when people run those reports and try and compare them to the PIRL. They're just built differently and they're not comparable, but they do, which will be comparable.
So the first page of the current system performance dashboard has 4 tabs, which we'll go into a little bit. That you can choose the service level, state or WDA, the time frame, whether you want single quarter or rolling 4 quarters, and then the time period, the quarter or the rolling 4 quarters ending on the selected quarter. So here's an example of the job seekers results. If you chose that tab, this would show you a breakdown of the job seeker information. Here's the employer graphical results, the exits and wages. And then if you have any questions about what these measures are, they're all found in the definitions, which talk about what on which page it is, and then what the section is within there. So like the total job seekers, for example, is the unduplicated total count for all self-served and staff-assisted job seekers for the selected area and time frame. So that's in the definitions tab. And then if you have any more questions for us, we can be reached at this number, which was also at the start of it, I believe. But is there any questions now?
There's a different version of this, a more current one that points you to this new website. And I believe that's the one that's available out there. But again, give me just a minute or a couple of days, not a minute, a couple of days to make just a few minor edits that I need to make. But if you look at it on Monday, it will be ready to go. And it has just a little bit more information in it. But overall, it's the same. Okay. Vince's question.
The question looking, will Q2 and Q4 employment and wage outcomes by demographic, so looking at race, gender, veteran status, etc., become available at some point? Is that looking within is the question within the dashboard or within the QPR? Dave, I believe that is your question.
I'm sorry, what was the question?
I believe it was you that posted the question about the Q2 and
was
Q4
Vince.
employment. Oh, Vince, I'm sorry. Vince, could you provide clarification on that?
You're on mute.
Oh, no,
Vince.
okay, no, let me just unmute here. One of the missing pieces that we've encountered is actually and as we go through some diversity, equity, and inclusion exercises in our service provision, is determining how well we're doing among specific categories in our region. And for now, we don't have the data that's telling us basic things about whether there's disparities in employment or disparities in in wages in the in the second quarter, for instance. So like, for instance, if you look at the QPRs, there are, and clearly, because that data is being collected for the other WIOA measures, it's possible to do that. But at least for now, there's only participation counts. Yeah, for on this page in the QPR, for all those things, the 1A, 2A, 3A, 4, all those things. So we have participation and exit counts, but we don't have outcomes on those. And so when will outcomes ever become available?
That is a great question, Vince. Thank you for the additional explanation. I would say at this point that data hasn't been discussed to be made available, but we can take the questions back and keep that on the parking lot as needed information should we be able to provide that in the future.
Okay, thank you.
I'm not sure what document Dave emailed out. Dave, what was that? Can we speak to that, or do you need to speak to
Sure.
that?
No, I think we can have a mutual conversation. What it was a breakdown. And Tarja, feel free to jump in and help me out because you know it better than I. But basically, it was an analysis of the measurable skill gain numerator and denominator by service. So basically, and then we broken out by workforce development area. So it was an attempt on our side to try to help us better understand what is being counted where. Is that a good explanation, Tarja?
Yeah, that's about right. So I wanted to see what makes up the numerator and how that differs between the workforce development areas for the measurable skills gains indicator. And that's all that is trying to do. And we can talk about that document more in detail, but if you have a specific question, we can take it here.
I do. This is Miranda from South Central. I had to read it a few times to fully understand it, so now I do. I do have a question about this section about the denominator, where you have it broken down on how that's captured, the denominator.
Sure.
And there is the 900 range for that. 901 is data program exit. This is not a exit-based performance measure. So I was curious if it's only, and I looked at our numbers and it looks like it's only pulling those that participated in a program year and have exited. So I'm a little confused as to why, if it's not supposed to be an exit performance indicator, why is that one of the parameters to capture it?
Yeah, measurable skills gain is not exit cohort based. It's an enrollment. Yeah. I'm not quite sure how to answer that. I have to go back and see.
So it's if I put the slide back on it, so the exit is being used to define a program year. So if the person was in participation for that program year, then you can report the measurable skill gain for them. That makes help or
no,
hinder?
Because to me, you would capture all that haven't exit also, because of course we have carryover. So how is the PIRL capturing those that are carryovers then, if it doesn't have an exit?
because it's between the 900 and the 901. So it has to be the 1 year. And remember on the table that I showed that the PIRL is actually 10 quarters of data. So if we go back to that one, which was, so measurable skill gains is by the program year. So like for the first quarter, it measures October 1st of 19 through 9/30 of 2020. They would have to have a program entry between and exit between these dates.
And exit, I don't think it's and exit, right? It's just a program entry.
Oh, no, it's just program entry. Yeah, Carrie
Yeah.
corrected me.
Okay, that's what I was like, either or it has to have an exit to be captured. That's what I was concerned about.
It has to have a participation that starts or runs through those dates.
Okay, that helps me. I have another question, because I know with monitoring even last year, they were talking about documenting the date enrolled into a program that leads to a credential. So I know we don't have that yet in ETO. Is the system just using the first date or enrollment or a first date start date of an OST? Is that what it's using currently, or?
Currently, it is using date entered training until that field becomes available.
Okay, I just want to.
Yeah, absolutely. And that work is underway.
Okay. And then I had a question about, sorry, I'm shifting gears back to your PowerPoint. So you had said the sources for the PIRL are pulling from ETO, the US Census, the Labor Statistical Group, and then the OSPI. That's correct, right? Those are the 4 that are pulling and going into the PIRL?
No, that's for the system performance dashboard. The PIRL,
Sorry.
the PIRL is ETO data along with wage data from
ESD?
UTAB and from the state wage interchange system.
Okay. And then you had said earlier, and it's also pulling from the clearinghouse for credentials?
Yes.
Okay. So
We do have a little bit of a glitch with that right now, though, just as an FYI, we're working on fixing it.
Okay. I just want my head clear on everything. So thank you very much. That's all I have.
I'm sorry, could you tell me once again what you're having a glitch with?
Collecting that data from that source. It is
Yeah.
sent to us via a spreadsheet. And
It's actually, it's the
go ahead.
source that I didn't catch.
What,
But
go ahead. What is it? I can't, what is the source of that data again?
Yeah.
Joseph?
The
Was that
National Student Clearinghouse.
Yes,
Okay.
they send us a spreadsheet and
And
currently it's not making it all the way to the right place. There was a stopgap in it, so we're fixing that. There isn't a lot of data that's collected from there, though. It's very minimal.
thank you.
Melinda, actually, were you thinking about the dashboard where the sources are coming to feed the dashboard?
No, I literally didn't hear the source of that, so I couldn't
Can you go back
understand
to that
yeah.
screen real quick, Joseph? It's at the very bottom of the,
no, it was this one. So the dashboard.
That's the dashboard.
Yes.
Go back to the other one that talks about the credentials. I think it's on the credentials screen where we explain the credentials. Just a couple more. This right here, the National Student Clearinghouse is a spreadsheet that's sent to us and we have a stopgap in that currently. We're fixing it. But again, it's not a lot of data that we get. Any other questions?
Well, there was one question.
Terry, did that answer your question with the sources? I accidentally skipped over that one. You asked what other sources outside of ETO. Has that been answered enough for you?
Yeah, what I heard was wage data in-state and out-of-state through Swiss and National
Swiss.
Student, and then Student Clearinghouse, and that's it. Is
That's
that,
it. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
Because we have another question from Vince about, can someone discuss which MSG PIRL elements are populated automatically by feeds of electronic records and which ones require manually entered touch points? And we would recommend that we take this, if you contact us outside of this, we can prepare a response that would be more detailed and be more complete in its answer.
I just wanted to add a little thing. I went back to the script. So the Workforce Board do produce the measurable skill scans, trying to duplicate the QPRs, and that's kind of what we drew upon in this document that was asked about here earlier. And the exit date comes into play for the measurable skill scans when you do have an exit. So you're looking at a certain period of time, and measurable skills scans look at both those exited during that period and people still enrolled in that period. So yeah, you do use the exit date to pinpoint exiters as well as enrollees within
It's
a certain
based off
period.
the participation date of the first service, training service that has a program enrollment that's open. It doesn't look at exit information.
Well, if you are exiting within a certain period, you are
That
also
means running through. It ran through it at some point. Yeah.
Right,
That's a run through. Yeah. So it possibly could have an exit date, but it possibly could not have an exit date and just run through it.
That's
And
right.
the
So
exit
either,
date is after.
if you're looking at a certain period, whether it be quarterly, a quarter, or 4 quarters, you are either you are a participant in that period, whether you exited or not. So either you exited
Yes.
or you didn't, and either way, you're still subject to the measurable skills gain
Right. As long
denominator.
as you had an open participation at any time during the reporting period.
Exactly.
Okay.
And then we had a question from Josh about does the National Student Clearinghouse data only include the students who can have it shared? We'll have to look into that one and get back to you on that one also.
I hope that it does, but we'll find out for sure.
Hey, so looking at that slide that you're showing right now, if an individual, if it's not ever recorded in ETO, the outcome, the credential earned, but they're exited, do you guys still sweep for that individual that was in training, or do you only sweep if it's indicated in ETO either at completion or at the follow-up that it's earned?
These are a must. Anything we've identified data needed in ETO, there's 3 slides for this, for different performance measures. These are a must.
So if one of these is not filled out, if like there wasn't an actual outcome, then it would probably not get picked up, is I believe what we're saying.
Yeah, it won't get, yeah.
So why is that a must?
To determine the type, when it's entered on the individualized training and support services touch point, that's to identify the credential that was obtained, the type of outcome that's captured.
You know,
It makes it official, right? And then the upload is the documentation that backs that up.
It's also in the outcome completion touch point. So we're recording that data in 2 places. What I'm hearing now is where it's swept is in the individualized service and training and support services touch point. Is that correct?
I think what we're saying is the program completion or outcomes touch point. Is that what we're saying?
Well, that's the same thing. Program completion's outcome is one place, or
Okay.
the service is a second place.
Okay, go ahead, Carrie.
Sorry about that. It's actually all three locations. So if the data has been entered as a service and the outcomes captured on the ITS touch point, that's one way to capture that. If there's nothing there, program completion and outcomes would be looked at next if it falls within the correct time frame, and it would be pulled from there. And then again, through the follow-up period, if they show the credential and the date that it was obtained, then it would be picked up from there. So it's from one of the three locations. It doesn't require duplicate or triplicate data entry to be able to sweep to pick those up.
Does that require a change to this screen? This is our first time running through this. So does that require a
No.
change to this, Carrie, to identify that the services screen also is looked at?
No, that's the first bullet, at least, for the individualized training and support service touch point. So these are the three locations where the data
So the actual
can be
outcome,
entered to be
okay, it's just
captured from there.
okay, got it,
Yeah,
okay.
so each one of those three represent based on time when that information is obtained.
So these are all ORs, individual training and support services, or program completion, or follow-up, right? Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
But whichever one is being used, it has to have the complete data.
Of all of this information. So if you record it
Well,
on the
no, like,
services
it's-
screen, it has to have the activity start, the activity end, and the actual outcome. If
Right,
it's on the program completion, it must have those two. If it's on the follow-up, it must have those two, right?
yes.
Can I ask a question about where the sweep is for measurable skill gain?
Sure, we can go back to that slide.
Okay, well, good. These slides went by pretty quick, by the way.
They did, and we were hoping that you would want to dig in more. So go to the ETO one, yeah. Okay, here we go, okay.
Okay, so originally, before the testing and results touch point was built, I had an email to policy and they responded that if a person got a credential, they were automatically counted as a yes in the sweep for a measurable skill gain. But when we were looking at the baseline for measurable skill gains, it looked like you guys were only doing the sweep from the testing touch point. Is the testing touch point the only place that you ever get it? It doesn't have any kind of logic of if you got the credential, obviously you made the skill gain.
Carrie, can you answer that, please?
Yes,
I
but
see it's coming out of the individualized training and support services. So does that mean once you got the credential, you don't have to enter the testing touch point? That's my specific question.
for some of the activities, for the test and results, that's to capture the progress, right, for measurable skill gains as someone obtains those intermittent progresses towards the completion of their education or training program.
Right.
Right. So that is one place we can capture that as test and results. There are specific items that are coming from the individualized training and support service touchpoint that have those elements available. And again, from program completion and outcomes.
So are these ors or are these ands? Do you have to have all three of these or can you have one of these?
They would be or similar to the credential question that we just
Okay.
walked through. However, I do want to emphasize that measurable skill gains is to obtain the progress. So it isn't just to measure them at the start and at the end of those activities, but it is their gains that they make within the progress for the allowable activities for measurable skill gains.
And that would be why the tests and results touch point is emphasized, is because that's where you're going to show progress without an actual outcome or a type of recognized credential. You can have a progress report, you can have a report card, or you can have the tests and results. But if you're trying to do it on the individualized training or the program completion, you're not going to have that because they've not completed that, but they are making progress. So that is why the test and results touch point comes into play.
Can I ask a follow-up question to that? This is Ismaila Asnomish. I think that Melinda's question, I think I'm still confused on the answer. So for those who have completed, and we have a touch point, the individualized training support touch point outcome with a credential, we do not need to take a measurable skills gains to get a base. We do not need to take a measurable skill gains touch point anymore. Is that what I'm hearing? Because that's being counted already. So if somebody complete their training, has a credential, they exit with that credential, that means that the measurable skill gains is going to get that also, right? We understand that we need to take it for progress, but what about those who have completed? Do we need to